Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome on this June 2nd coffee hour from the for the Senior Council Division. We have in our presence today the pleasure of introducing Dr. Andrew Mason, who is going to be the presenter for our coffee hour today. And the topic of his coffee hour is Aging in Hawaii, a threat to our prosperity. Also joining him is Ms. Kaeli Lopez, who is the State Director of AARP Hawaii. Dr. Mason, as a background, Dr. Mason is a Senior Fellow of the East-West Center, Honolulu, Hawaii, and Emeritus Professor of Economics at UH. He's a member of the Center for the Economics of Demography of Aging, CEDA, at the University of California, Berkeley. Dr. Mason also co-developed a conceptual and a statistical framework for understanding the generational economy, showing how individuals at every age acquire and use economic resources to meet their material needs, to help others, and to provide for their future. He co-founded the National Transfer Accounts Network, comprised of teams from over 70 countries, developing and applying the tools used to study the generational economy. He's authored or co-authored more than 150 journal articles and book chapters, and co-authored or co-edited 30 books and monographs. And Dr. Mason was invited to speak to us with the efforts of our own director, Charlene Iboshi. She's with us today. She's one of our board members. Thank you, Charlene. Without further ado, I present Dr. Andrew Mason. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. It's a pleasure to join you today. I only regret that I can't be in person and enjoy a nice cup of coffee with you. So I want to talk about what I think is one of the most important issues facing the state of Hawaii, which is the rising cost of aging. So sort of the headline number that I like to talk about is that the cost of aging is going to increase by $5 billion annually between 2010 and 2035. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've calculated how much seniors, people 65 and older, are likely to earn through their own devices, and that's going to rise to about $3.6 billion in 2035, and how much they are likely to consume, which will be almost $16 billion by 2035. And there's a huge gap there of around over $12 billion. So what is $1 billion? Maybe that doesn't resonate so well with people, but that's a little less than what the state budget was for the coming year, which I think is around $15 billion. So this is a big number. And it's going to be quite a challenge to come up with the resources, an additional $5 billion that will have to be met annually. This isn't a total gap. This is an annual gap that will have to be satisfied every year. So I want to talk about three questions. First, why is this gap increased so rapidly? Secondly, what things have we done in the past and why they're not likely to work in the future? And then finally, what sort of steps should we take as a society, but also as individuals who are going to face this as they get older? So Gilbert said a little bit about my background, but I want to say a little bit more about the knowledge base on which this presentation draws. I don't have the advantage of having gotten off an airplane, so you may think that I'm not really an expert on this topic. And even though I am presenting to you from Niue Valley, I've been working on this for a long time with a lot of other very talented people. And so this project was established at the East-West Center and the Center for the Economics and Demography of Aging at Berkeley in the mid-2000s. And the tools that we've developed as part of this have been reviewed by experts at the United Nations, the US Bureau of Economic Analysis, which is responsible for our national accounts, and many other institutions and individuals. We started with about 7 countries working on this with funding from the National Institute on Aging. But the project has been very of great interest to people, and we now have research teams in more than 70 countries and more than 95% of the world's population. So this has required a lot of money, and we've received a lot of support from various agencies and foundations. And you can find out more about this if you would like to on our website, ntaccounts.org. So this project has really focused as a global effort, but the issues that we're addressing globally and in the United States are also important for Hawaii. And so a couple of years ago, working with DBAD, we decided to have a project just on Hawaii. And this is the first US state for which we have undertaken this analysis. So the study and the data portal are available online, and there's the link, and I won't read it to you. You can always you can find it on my website, or you can email me if you would like to have this information. So, all right, let's turn to those 3 questions that I wanted to raise. The first is I wanted to talk about why the resource gap is increasing so rapidly. And there are really 2 reasons that this is going on. The first is that Hawaii's population is aging very rapidly. Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. One of which, of course, I think everyone understands, life expectancy has reached very high levels. In Hawaii, we have one of the highest life expectancies. Well, we have, I think, the highest in the United States, and as high as we find in Japan, almost. So that's one of the factors. The second one has to do with the history of population in Hawaii and in the United States and many other countries around the world, and that's the baby boom. So I was born at the leading edge of the baby boom in 1947. So the baby boom started in 46, and the baby boomers, the oldest baby boomers, are now 76 years old. The youngest are not yet retired, but they will begin to retire soon. And so we have that bulge entering the retirement age. Third, fertility is low. So retirees or baby boomers could have had a lot of kids, and then there would be a lot of people to support them, but they didn't. So now the average woman in the United States, I think, has about 1.7 births over her reproductive years. And so that's much lower than fertility used to be. Now, migration to Hawaii is modest. In fact, we've had declines in recent years, and there's no reason to expect that to change much in the future. And so there are a lot of demographic forces that are leading to this fairly rapid aging. But this isn't just a Hawaii phenomenon. It's similar throughout the United States. But I would say that one distinctive feature of Hawaii is the 85 plus population is growing quite rapidly here as compared with other states. So the second reason why there is this gap is because seniors consume much more than they earn. So this shows average values along the horizontal axis is age, And on the vertical axis is average consumption and labor income. So let's look at labor income, for example. It peaks at around a little under $60,000 per year for people in their late 50s. And then it begins to decline very sharply after that as people retire, particularly a lot of high income individuals retire. And so the people who are working sometimes don't have the best jobs in the world. And so that's one thing that's going on. The other thing is consumption. That's the blue line. And you can see there the consumption rises sharply at older ages. So the highest consumption is at people 85 and older. And why is that? Well, it's because of healthcare. So I need to say here that this consumption measure includes not just what private individuals consume, but also what the government is providing them through Medicare and Medicaid. And so this is a comprehensive measure of consumption, and seniors are very expensive. Well, when you compare the two, the cost of old age for any individual is substantial. Seniors consume a lot more than they produce through their labor income. And when you combine that with the high percentage of people in the old ages, that leads to a very high cost of aging. So what can we do about this? Well, so one possibility might be a business as usual scenario. So we've managed in the past, maybe we can cope in the future. So let's look a little bit at what's happened in the past. This is from our study, and it shows the ways that seniors are funding the gap between what they consume and what they earn through their labor. So the federal transfers are very important. Okay, these are mostly Social Security and Medicare. And they fund a very high percentage, almost half of the gap for seniors 75 and older. Now, one of the things that surprised me and may surprise you is that public programs are very unimportant net overall in Hawaii. Well, why is that? Well, there are some public programs that benefit seniors, but seniors also pay a lot of taxes. So they pay taxes on their consumption and on their income and on their property. And well, I don't need to tell you, everybody here knows about taxes and what they're like. And so net seniors are paying more to their kids. I'm sorry, seniors are paying more to the public sector than they are receiving. So what about family? That's private transfers. Well, if you look at the 60 to 74 age group, that value is negative, minus 18%. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that seniors are giving more to their kids than they're getting. Again, that might surprise you. It doesn't surprise me being a senior. Why? A major reason for this is housing. So a lot of seniors have housing and their kids live with them. And these values include the value of housing that flows to kids who are living with their older parents. Private transfers, that switches when we get to 75 and plus. So it's about a wash. There's some money from seniors going to kids, kids going to seniors. Net, it's about zero. And then finally is assets. So what do these include? Well, it includes pension plans that anybody has, it stocks and securities and bonds, but it also includes housing and the income that people earn on the housing that they have. And so for 75 and plus, assets provide about half of the resources that seniors need to support themselves. So that's what we're doing now. So then the question is, well, can we do this in the future? Well, let me kind of move ahead to look at what kind of strategies we might pursue in the future and whether the past would work. And so I've listed 4 major strategies that one could pursue, and my color coding here reflects my assessment about how realistic these are. So one is plan on more generous Social Security and Medicare. So I don't know if any of you follow this, but I'm sure some of you do. And there are reports that come out annually that talk about the finances of the Social Security and Medicare system. And they're not very good right now, and they're going to get worse in the future. And that's because of aging. So if we tried to maintain current levels of benefits, taxes would have to go up quite a bit. And this seems to be unrealistic, and certainly the policy, our legislature has not been forthcoming in trying to solve this problem. They just kick the can down the road, I guess is what you say. So what about reducing healthcare costs? That's a big cost for seniors. And so, well, it would be great to come up with ways that are more efficient, but maintain quality. And I think there's certainly some possibilities here. So one is maybe to reduce drug costs. We know that those are quite high in the United States. And another possibility is to try to reform the way that we handle Medicare, which basically does not look at the costs of procedures when they make assessments about their feasibility. So if something saves lives, no matter how costly it is, if it's millions and millions of dollars, we go ahead. Well, that's not my choice, but anyway, that leads to high costs. So what else can we do? Well, I think these are the green ones are the ones that are possible. We can work longer and secure better jobs. So traditional retirement age is not going to work when people are living into their 80s and 90s. And so it's really important that people work longer, but also prepare for that possibility in the future. And then the final thing is to build up assets and save more so that people have the financial resources that they will need in old age. And in that, that's been wonderful. I think that the state has this new program that I think we're going to hear more about from KLE. So let's be a little bit more specific about some of these things. I don't have any idea how long I've talked. 20 minutes. Okay. So what can government do? Well, I'm going to cast a fairly wide net that may surprise you, because the big theme and the kind of work that I do is that we don't solve something like aging by just dealing with seniors. That this is all about creating resources, about generational sharing and generational equity. And if we're going to have a healthy economy, we have to have a healthy workforce. And that means having schools that are of high quality and healthcare programs for children that are very good. It includes empowering women and making sure that they are able to realize their full potential. So I would emphasize those. A third thing I think Hawaii can do is take a closer look at its public pension programs. We see headlines about these at times, most recently about overtime amongst the police force. But this comes up in a lot of different ways, that there seem to be opportunities for gaming the pension system by public workers in Hawaii. And I think it would be good to take a close look at that and see if there's some adjustments that could be made. And the other thing is to avoid undue incentives for early retirement. A lot of people retire, need to retire early, but we don't want to particularly push them into early retirement. And I think some of our programs, the way we structure benefits in Hawaii, create a major incentive to retire, sometimes at relatively young ages. So the US, I think there's a lot of things that we need to do. One is I am very concerned that the US continues with this fiction that Social Security and Medicare can continue. Now, I, for one, favor raising Medicare benefit, Social Security benefits, particularly for low-income individuals. But we need to be honest with people about what it is we're going to do and what it's going to cost and what benefits they can expect. Right now, we're telling people that they're going to get things that's not possible. And so that, I think, does a disservice to anyone who's trying to figure out how to manage their old age. And then we can improve management of healthcare costs some, I think, which I already mentioned. Fifth area is encouraging private saving. So again, we're going to talk about that later. And then I think we can strengthen healthcare systems and income maintenance programs for low and middle income individuals. So people may wonder about this. Social Security is beneficial. Current benefits favor low earners. So you get a much higher rate of return on your Social Security contributions if you're in the low income group than if you're in a higher income group. But it's also come to light recently that Social Security and Medicare are disadvantaging low income because they die earlier. And so people are not living nearly as long and reaping the benefits from these programs as high income individuals. And so this is really a problem that hasn't been addressed and needs to be. Finally, let me talk about what individuals can do. So I'm going to cast a fairly wide net here and not talk about it in much detail. But to prepare for aging, the most important thing is to build and maintain a strong family. People, when they're young, may or may not realize this, but believe me, when you get to be old and when you begin to have health problems, there's nothing more important than having a partner or having others, children, who will step in and provide the support that is needed. The second thing is to take care of ourselves. We talk about this, I think, more in Hawaii. So especially health-seeking behavior and how there are high rates of diabetes and health problems in Hawaii that are really problematic for our state. But also people need to pursue lifelong learning if they're going to be productive later in their life. Third, we need to remain actively engaged in work or in civil society throughout life. So one problem with economic data that I've been presenting is it doesn't include the contributions of many people who are continuing to contribute to our society. It could be, grandmothers taking care of their grandchildren. It could be people who are working for charitable organizations or civic organizations that make a great contribution to our state. And we need for those things to continue and to grow. And then finally, a more traditional thing is financial goals and pursuing realistic financial goals. I worry sometimes that people are pursuing realistic, financial goals that are not realistic, that they're trying to invest in things that's going to return a high rate of return, and they may lose all their resources. Maybe I'm just too conservative, but I don't have any Bitcoin, and I wouldn't encourage anyone else to, unless you like to gamble. It's an alternative to going to Vegas. So anyway, that's what individuals can do. Let me just conclude by saying that this has all been kind of negative, but aging is an extraordinary success story. The fact that we are living to a much older age than we used to is a wonderful development and a great benefit to us. But rapid aging is going to be very disruptive over the next 15 to 20 years. And we really need a comprehensive response that emphasizes economic and social solidarity. We really have to take care of each other. And we need to look at all stages of the life cycle. This is not just about seniors, it's about workers, and it's about children. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Aloha, everyone. Kaylee E. Lopez here. As indicated, I'm the state director for ARP Hawaii. And what I really wanted to share was just how helpful Dr. Mason's work was for ARP. Last year, we worked with the state legislature to have a task force. ARP for 6+ years had attempted to pass legislation that would create a retirement savings program for primarily those individuals. We had about 200,000 plus employees here in Hawaii that did not have access to retirement savings through their employer. So again, they either didn't have a pension plan, a 401k offered by their employer, and such. And if you saw, one of the things that to me was most striking was the graph that Dr. Mason had that showed the gap. So it showed that our when we were younger, we're able to earn more and spend less. But as we age and get into the 70s and 80s, and we're relying primarily on retirement savings, or again, for people who are lucky enough to have pensions, to deal with the increasing costs of caring for either, as he said, those family members who move back home, or just really taking care of our lives as we move forward. So I want to just add a little bit to that. I'm going to start my PowerPoint really quickly, and hope you all can see that. So what we saw when we took a look at Dr. Mason's study and shared that with the task force was reinforcing ARP's concern, just from a national perspective, that there was and is a retirement crisis in Hawaii. Oh, excuse me. And so one of the things that we did was, again, try to pass legislation. So here's for Hawaii, you're seeing maybe on average earning of $20,000 a year from Social Security alone. Well, the cost of food, healthcare, and such is $26,000. Note that this does not include rent. So what's clear is that, again, Social Security alone is not sufficient. So what we tried to share with legislators, and again, in addition to the study that Dr. Mason had done, was really take a look at what was already being offered to employees here in Hawaii. And what you're able to see is about 76% were unable to save through their employer. So again, you have the concern of, as people get older, the need to have access. So what you'll often see, as Dr. Mason talked about, was a lot of people who continue to work when they get older. So say you imagined you'd retire at 60, but when you look at the realities of it, you have to put that off several more years and continue working in order to gain either a greater savings, or just really be able to make ends meet. So one of the things, as I said, what we're able to find is that about 200,000+ employees primarily with small businesses. So imagine if you're a small employer with maybe 10 or less employees, the cost for offering a 401k was just too high, too costly. And what we found from surveying small businesses is this issue of really that it cost, it was time consuming to create a program. It was too complicated, but more importantly, it was too costly for many of these small businesses. Again, potentially working off of very small margins of, of profit margins. What we also found was that people were very concerned. When you look at Hawaii residents, especially when you combine very concerned to somewhat concerned. Now, all of this was very critical data for us to get and acquire in trying to convince the legislature that a retirement savings program was important. So we took Dr. Mason's generational economy study, so I call it the next steps, worked with Pew Charitable Trust, put funds in and allowed for a study to be done by eConsult. And we took Dr. Mason's data and information, worked with the Department of Human Services regarding public services that had been provided over the last several years, and then projected that out for the next 20 years. What they determined was that there was going to be, over the next 20 years, a $1.7 billion gap in need by in public service, in services, versus the actual dollars that the state will have to contribute to do that. So the point being, as Dr. Mason said, you've got a shrinking tax base, an increase in the number of people who need services, and that the state's going to basically be, I hate to say it, stuck with the bill to make that happen. So we worked with other IRA programs. So this shows IRA programs that have been and were developed in other states, specifically Oregon, California, Illinois, and others. And they were able to get a lot of employees ready and signed up to participate in the program. So what we were able to do with that is pass legislation this past year. It was very difficult to get to this point. But what happened is the state legislature, through, believe me, a lot of effort, despite being able to see what Dr. Mason's projections showed as to the financial impact to the state, they passed a $2.7 million operating budget, which includes education and outreach to employees to get them to sign up for the program. They put in $25 million in matching incentives. And what that's intended is for the first 50,000 participants, there would be a $500 match by the state. Department of Labor and Industrial Relations is going to implement the program. And we're currently awaiting the governor's approval. And I think that's it. So I will stop sharing. The key point there is ARP was very clear that even though this program is targeted towards younger workers, meaning people that just start out right now, need to start saving for the next several 20 plus years in order to ensure that they do not, we don't continue to have kupuna who are retiring in poverty. And that's a key issue. And again, Dr. Mason, I don't know if you know this, but I have shared your study with as many policymakers as I can. I think this is an issue that is so critical for Hawaii to take a look at. It's not going to go away. As he said, it's been a success to continue to get older and enjoy our lives. And yet there is going to be a drain and an impact on Hawaii's economy if we all don't prepare for that financially. And ARP has, I could tell you a whole lot more of what I think people can do related to family caregivers and a bunch of other things. the cost to Hawaii is going to be very significant. And I hope more people take a look at the study and understand really the impact. So I shared it with the governor, by the way. At this point, I think when we do our forums, Dr. Mason, with upcoming potential governors and lieutenant governors, they all should take a look at it. I think it's a very important policy piece. And
I just say
that concludes my presentation.
Can I just say, I think this is work by KLEE and AARP and others involved in this initiative is very important and wonderful. And I must say, it's very gratifying to me because I'm used to doing, research, and you never know, does it have any impact? Is anybody picking up on this? And so it's really rewarding to see this great success. And I hope, that still implementation is going to be very important to get people to sign up for this. And I hope that we can come up with ways to make that successful. But kudos to KLEE and others at AARP.
Thank you. We definitely will want to get the word out. So, in 2024 is when the program is meant to be launched. We're going to continue working with the Department of the DLIR, Labor and Industrial Relations, to get the program up and going. We feel good about it. Thank you, Dr. Mason, because so many, again, employees of small business owners, and I do believe the small businesses are such a critical component and important for Hawaii sustainability to be able to have that happen. So now they're going to be able to offer this to their employees, and it's what they'd like to do. But again, it was just too costly. And
all
so
right.
Turn it back over to you, Dill, I guess, or Desmond.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ms. Lopez and Dr. Mason. Right now, if anyone in the room has any questions, please put them in the chat box and I will read them aloud. And then hopefully our panel of experts will be able to answer. All right. We'll give about okay.
Well, let me answer a question that no one's asked yet. So I was talking about, I don't know, $4.5 billion, and AARP was talking about $1.7 billion. And mine was an annual cost, and theirs was it seemed like a cost that was going to be building up over time.
Yes.
And I'm not sure about this, but I think their cost focuses on public sector costs. And one of the things that I've wanted to emphasize in my work is that the costs are not just public costs. These are costs that everybody are going to face. So a lot of these are private costs. But I think it's very important that the people in the legislature and in the government understand that if we do not come up with a good way for people to meet their aging needs, they're going to be coming back to the public sector and saying, we're starving, we don't have health care, we need your help. And there's going to be an incredible pressure on the public sector that will arise from that, far beyond the $1.7 billion that KLEE mentioned.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Ours, that 1.72 billion was the potential impact on the public sector to be able to help cover those costs if you don't have. Again, our interest was making sure the state knew, again, how much they were going to be on the hook for many of the state public benefit programs should again, kupuna or older adults not save enough or not have enough in their savings. So
yeah.
All right, looks like we have some questions coming into the chat. Looks like our first question is from Carol Richelieu. She wants to know what are the details of the bill, specifically for that the governor's currently looking at?
So SB 3289, what it does is it creates a new program. So there's a new special fund. I know some people aren't really happy about having those. It it creates a special fund for the retirement savings program. It puts about, as I said, $25 million into the fund to enable people to, again, have that be an incentive program. Puts the program under the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. It also creates standing up a board to oversee the program, and then also has 3 staff positions that were allocated for the program. An executive director, I can't remember the other 2, program administrator and such. And so it allows for that. What's going to happen is the state will then contract, if they do it similar to other states, they will put out a contract for a administrator of the program, and then also the financial advisor. So whether it's any of those financial advisors out there who will actually assist in managing the investments of the employee savings. The administrator pretty much will do a lot of the back end things. So many of the states have done that via online services that enable the employee to, again, take a look at their account, manage the amount they choose to save, and then what kind of stop and start. So one of the things that's really nice about this program is because it's the individual employees IRA, it goes with them. So whether they're individuals who have 3 part-time jobs or 2 jobs or move from. So one of the biggest challenges for these administrators is the fact that a lot of, for good or bad, a lot of lower income employees tend to move jobs quite frequently. So you'll have a lot of people, ending their registration, having to sign up again. The intent is to not have the burden be on the employer, I'm sorry. So there's no fee to the employer to participate. And so there's ideally isn't a cost. So it's similar to what employers have to do now for unemployment insurance, taxes and such. So this will be another deduction from the employee's paycheck, and that goes into the IRA program. Hope
All
I
right.
answered the question.
All right, next question comes from Gilbert Doles. What are the basic legal requirements for small business owners to expect with passage of this SB 3289?
So it is a mandatory requirement. So any employer who does not already offer a retirement savings program to their employees will be required to register with the state for this particular program. Now, what they can do, of course, is, and what we've seen in places like Oregon, is that some employers say, you know what, I've been putting it off. I don't really want to have my employees have to enroll in this state program. I'm actually going to bite the bullet and create a 401k for my employees. If that's the case, anywhere along the way, if an employer decides to offer their own program, they're no longer required to participate in the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program at all. So that'll be it. Again, like any other business thing, you take the funds from the employee, it should be remitted to wherever it should go. So, that's, to me, those are kind of primarily the issues, the fiduciary responsibilities they have now, as relates to, again, unemployment, state taxes, all of those things, is making sure those funds get to where they're supposed to go.
All right, next question is, well, I don't know if this is a question, but any thoughts on how SB 3289 could or would benefit those involved in the gig economy.
Yes, those in the gig economy or sole proprietors and such would be able to also participate. Now, keep in mind, they can do that kind of sort of now in opening up their own IRA. But in this particular case, if it feels like it's a lot more seamless and easy to transition, they absolutely are going to be able to participate as well.
All right. Next question. This is for Dr. Mason. Have there been recent studies on action plans or items that other countries have successfully used to mitigate similar issues that perhaps Hawaii or the US should consider?
Sure. There have been a lot of things that have happened. Many European countries and also many Asian countries face aging that's even more severe than what we're experiencing here. And they've been very worried about the sustainability of their pension programs. And so a lot of them have tried to take the decision-making out of the politicians' hands by setting up sort of automatic systems so that as aging occurs, people have to contribute more or their benefits are less. And so that would be one thing that we could do to try to improve our pension systems. And of course, the other thing is that our healthcare system is entirely different than the healthcare system in any country in the world. And it's not something that we should be particularly proud of. I mean, we do an awful lot of good things in our healthcare system, but boy, does it cost a lot of money. And many people are left behind in our healthcare system. And if you look at life expectancy in the United States, it really lags what's going on in many, many other countries. And I almost hate to bring it up because we've tried to reform healthcare and it has been almost impossible. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon, but that's what I would like to see happen.
All right. Next question. Aside from governmental assistance, do you have any recommendations to small businesses and self-employed to try and help themselves in their old age?
You want to take that first, Dr. Mason? You want me to chime in?
Well, let's see. So one advantage of small business is that they can continue their businesses. So they're not subject to the same kind of pension rules and things like that that a lot of employees are. So, when you're a worker, a lot of times you may face a lot of incentives or pressure to retire. Whereas if you're a small businessman, a lot of people in small business continue to work and they can do so. They have the flexibility. So then the question is, well, can they do that successfully? And then that's certainly not something that I can comment on. But I think that people have that advantage. And so healthcare costs are, of course, a big problem as people get older. Part of that's covered by Medicare, but not all of it. That's a thing that I would really emphasize is to continue with your business and maybe have some good succession planning. If you can get your daughter to take over your business so you can retire, well, God bless you. That's probably the best solution there is. But that's hard.
And I'll just add to that. I think, it's a lot of this is things that we know, and I think our parents tried to teach us, which was, take care of your health and save. And the issue about the healthcare cost and I'm late to that game at this point because there's a whole lot I've got to work on between now and the next few years. But clearly, the healthier we are, the better we take care of ourselves, the less we're going to need. Ideally, again, there's certain illnesses that no matter how healthy you are, whether it's cancer or other things that you can't per se control, but the degree to which you can help yourself by leading a healthier lifestyle, again, ideally less cost related to that. The other is the issue of saving for retirement. And I will, Carol, I'll send to you, ARP does do a program which talks about how to save for the future, and it covers a bunch of things, such as, especially if you're about 10 years away from retirement, what you want to do with regards to Medicare, preparation for Medicare, for your retirement, for investment, and those types of things. So I'll send that through so that you folks know, have access to that. The other, I think, really is something I hope that we can begin taking a look at, which is a totally separate issue and doesn't per se relate to small businesses, other than what Dr. Mason talked about, which is family members, which is caregiving literacy. I think the only way that Hawaii is going to be able to address some of the costs for long-term care, which is just phenomenally high, is having family members, as we do now, take care of our loved ones. And we're going to need more and more family members. So whether you're able to turn your business over to your daughter, or regrettably your daughter or son, not regrettably, I actually care for my mother, and it's quite a privilege. But really recognizing that some of that is going to be things that we're going to have to take care of. So I'm not sure we completely answered the question, but.
I could add a couple of things. One, too, this is sort of a personal decision, but I tried to delay taking Social Security as long as possible. The returns to delay are pretty high. So that's one thing that I know. There's probably a lot of small businesses that are under pressure when they turn 62 that they could elect to start taking Social Security, but there's a big cost to that. And then the other thing is to be very careful about Medicare. I found it to be very complicated. And you have to make a critical decision about Part B. That's outpatient services, and it's very important to have those when you sign up for Medicare. But it can be tricky figuring out when you have to do that, and I did not find it easy myself to figure that out. So get some good advice on that.
All right, next question. Who in the state government is working on this? I'm assuming they're talking about the bill, and then do they have sufficient resources?
Yes, so the bill was originally going to have this program under the Department of Budget and Finance, but it got moved to the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. And they were absolutely given, at least for this upcoming year, because of the budget surplus, we're given about $2.7 million. 1 million of that is specifically for the outreach and education component. And so the other 1.7 is for the ongoing operations, or at least the first year of operations. It will be important that the program continue to be funded moving forward.
All right, next question. Does this program provide matching funds for said investments similar to federal thrifting savings plan? What incentive is given to these employees and small businesses?
So normally as part of an IRA program, so the truth of the matter and why some employers may decide to actually offer their own 401k is that an employer is unable to provide matching funds of any kind to the program, or it runs afoul of ERISA. So it's entirely the employee's funds, paycheck or payroll deduction that goes into the program. The matching fund is, there is a matching fund by the state. And it's basically an incentive program for the first, as I said, the first 50,000 participants. It's the matching of $500, but it's only for people who are in this particular program, and it's incentive. The reason the legislature decided to do that is ARP's proposal was an opt-out program. So across the country, it's clear that about 20% participation increase in programs if an employee is required to opt out of a retirement savings program. In other words, they're automatically enrolled. A certain percentage is taken out of, there's a set amount determined, whether it's 5-6%, is automatically taken out of their payroll. And if they don't want to participate, they actually have to opt out. Well, when it went through the legislative process in the House, they changed the program to an opt-in, which is not as effective a saving strategy as opt-out. So because it's an opt-in program, the next committee, which was finance, figured, well, this opt-in might not work as effectively, so let's have an incentive program to try to encourage people to actually participate. So I hope I answered that question.
All right, looks like we have our final question on the chat. What was the concept and advantages of self-directed IRAs discussed versus the conventional method of funds managed by fund managers who charge a set of percentage based upon, for example, the value of the retirement savings account?
Was it discussed? In the sense that the task force was clear, and many of those in the financial investment area made clear that individuals right now can open up their own auto IRA program. You don't have to go through your employer to be able to have a program like this. The challenge is that consistently over the last 40 years, really only about 20% of individuals will go out and actually open up their own auto IRA program. So it was clear that if you make it available through their employer and it's something that can automatically be, or ideally automatically taken out as a payroll deduction, the likelihood of participation increases significantly. And as far as the, excuse me, the concept of a person being able to open up their own individual auto IRA and self-directed absolutely is still available on their own. But through this program, it was meant to really serve a broad range of people who may or may not have the ability or interest. I mean, for good or bad, a lot of people, once the programs get started up, many people actually don't pay attention. We hope through the education and outreach component, though, that'll change. The other thing I'm very hopeful of is that as people begin to save, they realize that it's possible. We worked with the Hawaiian Community Assets as an example. We're on the task force. The other thing I didn't mention was for many of these states where these programs exist, the average annual salary is relatively low. You're looking at $25,000 as the average income of the participants in California, $29,000 average income for those in Oregon. This really relates to your lower income working poor folks are going to be able to have access to this. Many of us who work for really good businesses and our higher earners have access to these types of programs already through our employers. So this is really going to hit the base that Dr. Mason was talking about.
All right. Looks like there aren't any more questions in the chat box. So with that being said, I will now give the closing remarks to our SCD President, Gilbert Doles.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mason and Kelly Lopez, or pretty fascinating presentation. I think we all kind of look at our lives and think of that old adage: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And hopefully that we all learn from all of this, and help our fellow employees. I run a small business, and I think that it's really important to take care of your employees, because after all, they take care of you. So thank you so much again, Dr. Mason and Kelly. We will take this knowledge and hope that the governor passes or doesn't veto the bill, because I think it's important for all of us to help each other out. And with all that, thank you very much, Devin and the HSBA staff, for helping put together this coffee hour. And thank you all the SCD members who have participated and listened in on our program. And until the next coffee hour, have a great day, everyone. Take care.